Pouring concrete tomorrow. Got over 100 yards coming, and for a rookie like me, that'll make you shake a little bit. So some checks I'm doing before the concrete trucks show up is I'm making sure that I'm not going to have anything on top of my footer that would affect my connection between the slab and the footer. So I'm going to make sure all that stuff's scooped out. Just from sitting, you know, some things tend to roll down there. Also tomorrow morning, I'm going to spray all my forms down with water to help the wood release from the concrete. So for my garage doors, I am doing a trough type system. So you can see this 3/4 plywood is just to make a lip for that garage door. Now this is to take a little bit of pressure off me of making sure my garage door trough is set up right while I'm pouring. If I didn't have these installed, I would have to scoop that out after the concrete dries a little bit, and I just don't really want that pressure on me. So this way I can pour the concrete, let it set a little bit, and then pull these. And if you're curious, I'm using 14-foot wide doors, 2 of them. Just built me some metal brackets to hold these things in place. And so the dimensions on this, since my door will be actually 14 feet, I went ahead and went another 6 inches to make sure that I have plenty of room to put my track and everything in there. I measured the ones at my place of work, which we have 12-foot wide doors, and they made the trough at 12 feet and 3 inches. And they had to chisel out some concrete because that was cutting it close to get the garage door tracks in there. So I went a few extra inches just to make that easier and avoid that issue. So we'll see how that goes. Got me a couple of homemade chutes. I did a little video on these. Got them ready to go to get out there a little bit farther. And also I've set up some string lines to keep an eye on. You can see these right here. So I just put me a screw on each end, and as we're pouring, I'm going to watch this string line to make sure that the forms aren't bowing out too much. This edge will be over 2.5 feet tall, so that's going to put lots of pressure on this side of the form. Now for all my post brackets that I'm going to wet set in the concrete, I've went ahead and marked the forms as a backup, but also I have some string lines with the exact measurement on them so I can set all the posts to the string line. So this 50 by 80 slab, you might ask yourself, over 100 yards, that sounds pretty high for a slab like this. And that is high, and that's just because of how deep my footer is down there. If you remember, we're building on a hill, so I had to do some kind of goofy footer type systems. So just like this step in the foundation, all these areas through here, that's going to take a lot of concrete to fill that up. Got a pretty good group of my buddies coming in tomorrow, hoping as long as they all show up, we should have a pretty big crew. I'll let you know at the end of the video how much concrete I actually use yardage wise and how much it cost as well. And don't worry, I'll be doing a video of all the costs at the end of the series. Also got these forms set up here in the lean-to area to pour some concrete in case my calculations are way off and I order way too much concrete. Here's another look at the grade pins here. All this is a T of rebar welded up, and I've set all these with the laser to where the bottom portion will be grade of the concrete slab as we're pouring. And I did that for a nice visual reference as we're pouring. I'll have the laser as a backup, but I didn't want to tie up one guy with the laser to have to run around and make sure everyone's keeping grade fine. This will make it good for us rookies, and all these grade pins are set 10 feet apart. So this is Bob and Kyle. Now these are the only 2 professionals I hired, and they decided it was best if we went ahead and poured a lift all the way around the edge.
Now we did this to take some of the pressure off the forms. So we dumped out these first 2 trucks all on this edge, and that pretty much did it all the way around. Now these trucks hold 10 yards apiece. So Dad's grabbing one of my homemade chutes. Let's see how that works. Didn't work at all. Just crushed it right in half. You know, some ideas are good ones and some just don't work. So here we are striking off our wet pads between the forms and the grade pins. Now we're doing this so we have a reference as we're running the vibroscreen. Now I'm running the vibroscreen. This thing has a 14-foot stick on it, and this vibroscreen took a lot of the effort and skill out of making this floor nice and flat. This thing was well worth the money, and it was pretty easy to use. Now I ordered my concrete with a 6-inch slump, but some of the loads that we had to work out towards the middle we had to add some water, which isn't ideal because the more water you add, the weaker the concrete is. Now Bob's hitting it with the bull float. Now he's one of the professionals I hired. He's in his 60s. I originally hired him just for his experience. But he did the work of about 3 guys. He worked circles around all us young guys. So I ordered a total of 110 yards, so 11 trucks. But the first 6 trucks I had retarder in the loads. That ended up being a bit of a mistake. I should have ordered retarder in all the loads because since I only ordered it in about half, the whole slab started curing about the same time. We really had to rush in the finishing process.
Alright, so it's 4 days later. Let's see what we got. Unfortunately, the day after the pour, I had to go back to work. So it would have been a lot better to strip these forms and saw it the next day. But you work with what you got to. So the floor turned out really flat, which I'm happy with, but the finish isn't quite as smooth as I would have liked in some spots. Part of the issue with that was that power trowel engine blew up and caught fire a couple times in the process. We were down to the 1 trowel. I had Dad go get a 4-foot trowel, but we still didn't quite have enough time to get it real smooth, but I'm mostly happy with it. The only spot that bothers me is right through here. You can see it's a little bit rough through here, so I might go through with the sander and smooth that out some. This is still miles better than my shop floor at work that I'm used to working on. Still, when you get something brand new, you want it to at least be pretty for a little bit. All the finish around the brackets ended up being pretty nice. Now all these walls are going to end up finished, so you're not actually going to see any of this portion. The only part where the forms started to get sketchy was right here. You can see that bow. Now all these brackets are set to a string line, so that didn't mess me up on my brackets, but still, that's a little scary as you're pouring the concrete and you see that form bow out a little bit, but it held. No blowouts or nothing. The finish around the plumbing ended up looking pretty good. We got a little bit of concrete over my toilet flanges. I'll have to scrape off, but I covered all these up with tape, so that shouldn't be too hard. So the spot where we put the extra concrete over here. Now I didn't have much time to really finish this, which I don't care about this too much. I'll just be parking my backhoe and tractor and bucket truck and stuff like that in here. So not a work surface. But I was able to throw the power trowel on after it was pretty hard and at least knock down these bull float lines a little bit. Here's how the troughs look. Man, they turned out great. That system was pretty nice. Really helped out an amateur. During this pour, I sure learned a lot. One lesson being that a pour this big is definitely best left to a professional. But when you're as foolish as me, you try it anyways. So lesson one I learned was I would definitely hire a pump truck, because that was one of the biggest problems, is actually getting the concrete to where it needed to be. Second lesson is I would be better prepared to have water ready on site. So there's no water out here currently, and I had bought a whole bunch of bottled water, and that did not go very far when we were finishing, and it was drying up fast. So we had to run down the road and keep bringing buckets of water. So another lesson I learned, particularly with this big slab like this, is I would have a bigger power trowel ready. So I have the two 3-foot trowels, which the engine blew on the one. Having at least one big power trowel on site would have really helped the finishing process, I'm sure. Look at this thing, it was blowing smoke and catching fire. We dumped some water on it to put the fire out and keep going until it just finally went. Be time for a harbor freighter soon. Part of this concrete price that you see here was concrete used to also pour all the piers for the lean-to, some of the flat work in the lean-to, and also part of my driveway. So in reality, you could probably knock $2,000 or $3,000 off of this price. On the rebar, so I used 1/2-inch rebar. Now depending on what you're doing with your shop, you might not even need rebar. You might just use wire mesh, which is far cheaper. Another note on this concrete, this is a 6-inch slab, and I did that because I generally work on equipment and heavy things, and I just wanted to be prepared for that. But you could save a bunch of money if you just did a 4-inch slab. Another way of saving a lot of money also is if you weren't trying to build on a hill like me. that would save you some hassle. So on the fill dirt and gravel, you could probably save quite a bit as well on that if you're not building on a hill. On the plumbing, there's no way around that really. That's $500 in just materials, no labor or nothing. And then the total labor that I paid was roughly $2,000, and the only professional labor I paid was the 2 pro concrete guys, so everyone else was pretty reasonable. And a note on the labor, Dad has helped me quite a bit for free. So if you have a dad or a good friend that is willing to help you out like that, that can save you quite a bit of money as well. And I greatly appreciate that. Over $29,000 seems like a lot. That's over double what my last shop cost me, and this is just concrete. But due to inflation, prices are higher than ever. And from my research, that's about half the cost I would pay of a professional. Also, when doing something like this yourself, you get to experience all the triumphs and failures, and that's something I really enjoy. Well, I hope that was entertaining or informational. Well, I'm going to get these forms stripped and this thing sawed up. So we'll catch you guys next time.
Keep thinking.